Welcome to the Cold Case Christianity broadcast, the only Christian case-making program hosted by a cold case homicide detective. J. Warner Wallace has been investigating cold case murders in Los Angeles County for over a decade. His work has been featured on Fox News, Court TV, and Dateline. For more information about Jim's work and the case for Christianity, please visit coldcasechristianity.com. Now, here's your host, J. Warner Wallace.
Thanks for joining us here at Cold Case Christianity. I'm J. Warner Wallace. Now, today we're going to continue our intermittent series on the nature of truth by asking a question, a very specific question about the nature of reality. And really it comes down to claims about whether or not God exists, and if God does exist, which, if any, world religion really kind of gets it right. Do any of them get it right? I mean, is there enough common truth claims between religious systems that we ought to just kind of ignore the differences? I mean, doesn't everyone have some idea of what God is like? And aren't these ideas all close enough? I mean, don't they all share certain common features? And if they do, why are we arguing about what the differences are? Why are we separating? And so we're going to talk about that on today's show. And I want to introduce it by introducing you to something you're probably familiar with, this bumper sticker, which I happen to see a lot right around where I live here in Southern California, the coexist bumper sticker. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with this bumper sticker, but I bet you've seen something similar because there are a lot of other similar bumper stickers as well. And every one of these seems to be trying to make a claim about the nature of religious truth, truth about God. And don't you get a sense from this that the claim of the manufacturers of these kinds of bumper stickers is just this? Why don't you guys all just stop majoring on the on the minors and get along? I mean, you all have some beliefs about God's existence or God's nature, and they're close enough, these beliefs. I mean, you believe some slight variation of the other guy, but really everything is pretty much true, isn't it? All of these systems are equally true. And that's really the claim we want to examine today. Is it true that all religions are equally true? And that's what we're going to talk about. Because I think to make this kind of a claim, I mean, it certainly seems to be the underlying meaning behind bumper stickers such as this. Why can't we coexist and just get along and believe what you want to believe and leave everyone else alone and live in peace with one love, and just imagine a world where people were not constantly fighting about what they believe when it comes to religious notions or religious ideas. It certainly sounds like a peaceful world, doesn't it? If we could all just drop the differences. But really, if we're going to take these kinds of bumper stickers seriously, you have to admit the claim has to be taken seriously. And the claim is simply that all religions are equally true in so much that they basically offer something about God, which none of which can be really demonstrated, none of which can be really known with certainty. So why can't you just all get along? Well, first of all, I want to examine the claim that all religions are equally true. Is that claim even possible? That it could be true? Let's take a look at some claims that different religions make and see if the idea that all religions are equally true can be maintained given what we know about each religious system and its claims. So let's begin with this first one. You know, if you've got a friend who maybe is somebody who's involved in a Near Eastern or an Eastern religion like Hinduism or Buddhism, this idea that they believe in a deity or in some higher power or in some supernatural force is probably common to those belief systems. But the idea that this force would be personal, that's another step too far. And so these systems would propose an impersonal force, but not a personal God. But we as Christians have a very different view of what we believe when it comes to God's nature. We believe that God is personal. Now, look at these two claims carefully. Both could be wrong, or one could be right. But because they offer completely diametrically opposed truth claims, one that there is no personal God and one that there is, they can't both be true at the same time and in the same way. They've got to either both be wrong or one is wrong. It's incumbent upon us then to figure out which of the two is wrong. But to make the claim that both are equally true seems nonsensical given that they offer two opposing views of reality. Let's go one more step. And maybe you know somebody who has made this statement, maybe somebody you know who's been raised Jewish or is part of a Jewish, either Orthodox Jewish or Reformed Jewish. Either way, they may or may not accept Jesus at all, but if they do accept Jesus, they would probably accept him as an historic figure, a rabbi who taught some really interesting ideas and should be respected and honored, but they would probably reject him as God. I mean, I'm sure they would. So this is two completely different views about the nature of Jesus. One who says Jesus is just a man who was a teacher, a rabbi. The other that says Jesus is God. They can both be wrong, or one can be wrong and one right, but they both can't be true. If that's the case, we've got a problem because they offer two completely different views about the nature of Jesus. Let's go one more step. If you've got friends, for example, who are of Islamic background, Muslims would deny that Jesus died on the cross. Jesus is just another prophet. He is not God. He did not die on that cross. In fact, some Muslims believe that an impostor either was on the cross in Jesus' place, or any number of theories about, but they would reject that Jesus, as we believe as Christians, actually died on that cross and then rose from the grave. So we have two completely different views about the nature of the resurrection here. They can both be wrong. One can be wrong, one can be right, but they both can't be true. That's the problem. If what you mean by equally true is that both these claims are equally untrue, well then okay, then you can make the statement. But to think, and that's not what I think the bumper stickers want us to believe, is that both of these are equally true and ought to be treated as such. Stop, nitpicking the details. But these aren't nitpicky details. In fact, these are major claims that each system proposes, and they contradict one another. And that's the problem here, don't you think? And this is why it's time for us to really take a good look at what we believe and at least recognize this. The idea that these claims could be equally true, in the sense they both are true or true enough, it really reflects a lack of knowledge about what each system teaches to begin with. But if you really start to look at the claims of both systems, you'll see that they can both be equally false, but they both can't be equally true. Now, given that that's the case, how do we proceed? How do we determine what truth is? If I asked you to define what truth is, would you be able to give me an operating definition of truth so I could distinguish between these two systems as I presented them to you? How would you know which of these two systems is true? What system would you put in place? What process would you put in place? That is what we're going to look at right now. And we'll take a quick break. When we come back, I'll give you several theories that are offered in the academy and the universities about how to discern truth. And then I'll give you what I believe is not only the biblical definition of truth, but happens to be the one definition that we actually employ on a daily basis. And we'll do that right after the break.
In addition to Jim's daily blog and weekly podcasts and videos, Jim continues to write books designed to help you become a better Christian casemaker. At coldcasechristianity.com, you'll find a link to Cold Case Christianity, a homicide detective investigates the claims of the Gospels, and Alive, a cold case approach to the resurrection. These resources will help you defend what you believe and share it with others.
Okay, let's take a look now at how we might define truth. And I want to give you several options that I typically see in our culture today, and I'll explain to you why I think these are deficient. Here's the first one. Take a look. Truth is whatever works. It's called pragmatism. And this idea that truth is simply whatever works, I mean, couldn't you offer that? I mean, how do you know, for example, what drug will cure tuberculosis? We talked about that several episodes ago. How do we know that you've got the right drug, the true drug? Well, don't you find that out by testing all the drugs to see which one works? And after you discover that the drug that cures tuberculosis, you might even discover it accidentally, but once you know it cures it, you now have the truth about which drug. That actually sounds reasonable, doesn't it? So maybe it is a matter of pragmatism, but let's just ask the question. Could we use that to determine truth in every scenario? Really, let's think about that for a minute. Have you ever told a successful lie, a lie that worked? A lie that worked. Look, there are several realities that aren't really practical or pragmatic. Let me give you an example of that. Death. As I get older, death is a reality. It's not pragmatic, though. It's not practical. It doesn't work for me. Death does not work for me, but I still have to embrace the truth claims related to death because it doesn't matter whether it works for me. And also, I think you could show me I could show you a number of examples of successful lies. If you, for example, when your wife asks you, do I look heavy or thin in this dress? Well, you could tell her the truth, and hopefully she looks great in that dress. But if she doesn't and you want to protect her feelings, You might tell her a successful fib because you think that it might work, going to get you through the evening without being strangled. But for example, if I said to my wife, do you think I'm losing my hair? Well, I know I'm losing my hair, but she might want to make me feel good and tell a successful lie, which happens to work in the moment, that no, you haven't lost a bit of hair in the entire time I've known you. Well, that may not be true, but it sure works. And so the problem, of course, here is there are a number of examples of lies that are successful, but because they work, it does not make the lie true. So truth may, on occasion, line up with what works. I get that. But you could never determine truth on an overall process by simply asking, does it work? Because there are lots of lies that work, and that does not make them true. Let me give you another way that truth is sometimes discerned, or another definition that is sometimes offered by our culture. Here it is on the screen. Take a look. Truth is simply whatever we can sense. Now, what I mean by that is that, we have a certain empiricist, this is called empiricism, by the way. We have a certain set of empirical senses, our taste, our what we see, what we smell, what we hear. And we are in an age right now where it seems like if people cannot demonstrate a truth claim empirically, a lot of folks are going to want to reject that truth claim. Now think about that for a minute. What I mean is, have you ever heard somebody make a claim like this one? Take a look at your screen. I only trust what can be discovered with science. I'm a scientific person, I'm skeptical, and you got to prove it to me. You got to show it to me, and unless you can show me with science that something is true, I can't really accept it. Do you see the problem with that statement, though? There's something rather self-refuting about the statement, because the statement itself cannot be discovered with science. In other words, the truth nature of the statement that you can only trust things you can discover with your senses, or you can discover with science. Whether that's true or not, you can't discover that with science. It turns out that this statement is a philosophical statement you have to accept or reject before you even begin to do science. And so again, we sometimes are confused living in the age in which we live and thinking that science is the bottom level of all knowledge. It's the foundation upon which we build everything, when in fact, philosophy and a philosophy of science lies even below any scientific endeavor. It turns out philosophy is the foundation upon which we build. This statement, I can only trust what can be discovered with science, cannot itself be discovered with science. You don't know that you can only trust what you can discover with science unless you decide philosophically in advance that that is true. But you could not discover whether that is true with science. So your own criteria for what could be true cannot confirm this true statement as either true or false. So that's the problem with this view. This view in and of itself does not stand up on its own 2 feet. All right, let's go one more definition that's sometimes offered. And I have family members who are LDS, they're Mormons, who really seem to take this view when it comes to determining whether or not God exists and whether or not Mormonism is true. And that is a view called emotivism. And it's often kind of expressed this way: truth is what I feel. I just know it in my heart. I know I'm the determiner of truth. It's based on an experience I've had and my reaction to that experience, a feeling I got as a result of an experience. However you want to couch it, however you want to say it. This is a notion of truth called emotivism. Now, I want you to ask yourself a question. Have you ever known anyone who held an irrational feeling? An irrational fear, for example. I've got a partner for years. I had a partner who was a huge guy, very strong guy, about 6'7". He's just a big, big guy. And this guy had an irrational fear of garden spiders. So irrational, in fact, that even the sight of, he couldn't even be run a photograph of a garden spider. And most of us, when we encounter a garden spider, a lot of us just going to kind of brush it off. They're a garden spider. I'm not talking about poisonous spiders. I'm talking about your everyday, random insect in the backyard kind of spider. And his fear was so pronounced that we started to actually make fun of him. If somebody could find a way to get a spider into the office and put it on his desk, well, that was going to happen because we wanted to see his reaction. Because this big guy, so strong in so many ways, had an irrational fear when it came to spiders. Okay. That's why you can't trust your feelings on such things. But I also would offer there's an entire category of realities that really have no way you could determine anything about them by way of your feel. For example, you realize that paper clips Paper clips, there's a truth about paper clips, a truth about the kind of material that needs to be used to form a paper clip, the kind of tensile strength that it has to have, the kinds of shapes that can be used for paper clips. People have tried lots of different shapes. There are a number of truth claims related to paper clips, but I doubt that your emotions could get you to those truths or could really help you discern between those truths. There are a number of facts about reality that seem to be completely detached from any kind of feeling, any kind of emotional response, or any kind of experience you could have that would lend you to believe one side is true or the other is not. And that's the problem, that not every claim can be justified, can be discovered, can be substantiated by an emotion. As a matter of fact, I would suggest that feelings are sometimes the worst barometer, the worst way to measure whether something is true. Let's go to a definition of truth that I think is biblical, and I think it's the definition of truth that whether you even realize it or not, you've been experiencing and employing every day for most of your life. This is a view of truth that is known as the correspondence theory of truth, and it often is expressed just like this. Take a look at your screen. Truth is a relationship. A relationship. Now, wait, let me back up for a second. If you're a Christian and you've been kind of raised in the church culture, sometimes when we say truth is a relationship, people start to think, well, you mean like Jesus? Because Jesus said he was the truth, the way, and the life, and I've got a relationship with Jesus. No, that's not exactly what I'm talking about here. Here what I'm talking about is a relationship like in an equation, where you say 1 + 1 = 2. The stuff on one side of the equal sign is equivalent to the stuff on the other side of the equal sign. 1 + 1 is equivalent to 2. That's the kind of relationship I'm talking about. When the stuff on one side of the equal sign is the same as the stuff on the other side of the equal sign, you've got an equality relationship. You've got a relationship in which these things are the same. So I'll take a look at, for example, this expression. What you believe equals what really is. Now, when that is the case, when what you believe, the thing on one side of the equal sign, is the same as what really is, the thing on the other side of the equal sign, that relationship, that correspondence between what you believe and what really is, that is called truth. So, for example, if I believe that there is a dog in the next room, even though I have not seen that there's a dog in the next room, and then I walk into that room and sure enough there's a dog in that room, then what I believed is now confirmed by what really is. And that relationship is now called truth. I held a true claim. I believed something that was true because what I believed happened to match what really is. This correspondence between belief and reality that is called the correspondence theory of truth. And this is what's so important for us to grab. When it comes down to whether or not Christianity or Mormonism or Buddhism or Islam or any of these beliefs about God are true, I am not going to be able to rely on what I can prove empirically or what I can, not entirely anyway, or what I can prove emotively, not entirely anyway, or what I can prove by way of pragmatism, not entirely. I can certainly weigh these factors in some degree in my decision, but in the end, what's most important is, does what I believe actually correspond to what truly is? Now, how are we going to determine what truly is? Of course, there's an evidential process, right? I even talk about that at great length in my book, Cold Case Christianity. But my point is, truth is not what I feel about it, or truth is not, what works. Truth is what really is, and how I would determine that is what determines the truth nature of my theistic claim, if it's Christianity or otherwise. So again, the correspondence theory of truth is really something all of us need to kind of get our hands around. And if someone asks you, well, how do I know what is true? This equation I offered, what you believe happens to match what really is, well, then you happen to know what is true. Okay, that being the case, take a short break, because it seems to me that even when we make a case for what is true with our friends, not everyone's going to agree, right? Well, let's talk about that right after the break.
Be sure to visit the Cold Case Christianity website daily to read Jim's blog, watch the weekly video, or listen to the Cold Case Christianity podcast. You'll also find great free resources, including the free downloadable monthly Bible insert. While you're there, be sure to sign up for Jim's daily case note email. Cold Case Christianity is designed to help you become a better Christian casemaker. Be sure to download the free Cold Case Christianity app from the iTunes Store and the Android Marketplace. The Cold Case Christianity app puts all the resources from coldcasechristianity.com in the palm of your hand. You can read the daily blog, listen to podcasts, and watch videos from within the application, And Jim uses the app to send direct messages to fans of Cold Case Christianity. The app will also link you to all Cold Case Christianity social media and provide you with a direct connection to J. Warner Wallace. Download the app today and become a better Christian casemaker. Need a speaker for your next conference, retreat, training seminar, or church service? Jim travels around the country, making the case for the existence of God, the deity of Jesus, and the reliability of the Bible. He'd love to partner with you to create a powerful, transformational training experience. Just visit the Cold Case Christianity website and click the Book Me tab. You'll find everything you need to know there, including a list of Jim's speaking topics, promotional materials, Jim's speaking calendar, and a link to connect with our team so we can book your event.
Okay, now, even though you may have a definition of truth and you've got some good evidence to believe something is true, sometimes you can present this evidence and you still don't get a response on the part of the people you're presenting it to. You'd expect them to say, well, okay, I get it, I believe you. But sure enough, they don't. Not everyone's going to agree with your claims, even if you make a persuasive case. Let me just give you a couple of tips from trials, jury trials that I've been involved in. And what I've learned in the process of doing these jury trials is a couple of things. Number one, I've learned that, first of all, both sides are going to make a case. Both sides. With equal passion, with equal perseverance, with equal precision. They're going to call their own witnesses, both sides. Only one side's going to have truth. But it's sure going to look like the jury, like, wow, both sides have a really expansive case with all kinds of expert witnesses. Don't be surprised when the other side is able to make a case. Just because the other side is able to make a case does not mean it's a true case. That's also true for us as Christians, though. Just because we can make a case doesn't mean it's true. My point here is, don't be shaken by the fact that the other side may make a very persuasive case. It doesn't mean they have the truth. Number two, I want you to remember that almost all jury trials are decided not in opening statements, not in the jury the evidence presentation, and not even at closing arguments. Almost every jury trial begins and ends with jury selection. Jury selection, jury selection. You put the wrong 12 people in the box, it's not going to matter what you say, you're not going to convince them. So when you start to express your religious beliefs, your beliefs about God, with the people in your life, remember that they may reject what you claim for a number of reasons that have nothing to do with rationality, have nothing to do with the nature of your evidence or the strength of your case or the way you presented the case. Because it turns out that there are 3 reasons why anyone rejects a truth claim. And what that means is you have to be very careful about picking your jury. You may know in advance that this is an issue, one of these 3 things is an issue for the person you're talking to. And if that's the case, you may want to go at a different angle. Know your jury. Every jury is different. Every juror is different. There are certain things I will do with one juror I wouldn't do with another. And especially is true, I'm sharing my faith. I have to understand who is my audience. So let's get to it. I often say that there are 3 reasons why anyone shuns a truth claim. And I've kind of cheated with the English language here in order to use the word shun, which no one ever uses anymore, but reject is also another kind of synonym for shun. And I think what happens here is that only one of these 3 reasons really exists in the heart of anyone who would say, I don't believe you, or I don't accept that, whatever claim it is you're making. The first one are what I would call rational objections. Rational. You can see how I've twisted the word shun and stuck it in there. And I think when you hear people say things like, I just need more evidence. I get you. I'm open to the possibility, but I just don't know there's good enough evidence to really land it here. I'm still undecided. Well, that's probably somebody who really truly is undecided about the evidence. And maybe this is somebody you could spend more time with making a more persuasive evidential case, right? Because they sure seem like the thing that's hanging them up is a missing piece, a missing link in the evidence chain. So there are people like this, and when you see that, I want you to go ahead and take the time to make the best evidential case you possibly can. Now, that being the case, this isn't always why somebody would reject a truth claim. There are times when people reject a truth claim because it's something other than rational. It's another motivating factor, another shun. Sometimes it's, as you see here, emotional rejection. Emotional rejection. What I mean is, if you hear someone say, well, look, I don't, I've known a lot of Christians. They're all hypocrites. I don't like what I see in Christians. Therefore, I could never be a Christian. Or if they express a certain anger or frustration openly, well, this doesn't have a lot to do with whether the facts are true. I mean, I can have I can have a great case, but if the prosecutor is a jerk and the jury doesn't like the prosecutor, they may not decide to accept what the prosecutor is saying. If somebody it seems like they're starting to complain more about the messenger than the message, you're starting to get into an emotional area that you may want to be careful about. That's why it's so important for us not to be the reason why somebody would reject a claim on emotional grounds because we've been arguing or we've been argumentative. We don't want to be argumentative. We don't want to be arguing because everyone loses. You lose the conversation if the person you're talking to thinks you're a jerk. So again, people may reject a claim because they have an emotional response either to the messenger or to other prior messengers who have called themselves Christians. I would have said the same thing, if I'm honest with you. As a cop, it seemed like a lot of people I took to jail would tell me that they were Christians, and I used to think, wow, whatever Christianity is, it doesn't seem to be doing them a lot of help. I mean, they don't seem to be much changed or transformed by their Christian experience. So it was an emotional response, really. The third kind of claim, the third kind of reason, rather, why people would reject a truth claim, the third shun in my list of 3 here is offered here. It's not emotional, but volitional, a volitional rejection, a willful rejection. And you'll sometimes hear someone say something like, I don't care. I'm not interested. I don't care whether it's true or false. I don't have time for that. I'm busy. I don't want to bother with that. It's really another way of saying I would not bend my knee to this even if it was true. Well, that's not a rational objection. And that's not even really an emotional objection. That's about wanting to be your own king, wanting to be the ruler of your own life, wanting to have there be no higher authority than you. That's about will. That's about volition. This is a volitional objection. So when you hear this kind of objection, realize that you're probably dealing with somebody who's I don't even know, you know one thing, the more evidence you show somebody who's in volitional denial, do you think it's really going to have much effect on them? Probably not. I mean, this is why we say that when we talk to people about the truth claims of Christianity, we try to accompany our evidential case with prayerful interaction with God, where we're praying for people that God would remove their kind of anger or hostility toward the things of God. Their willful resistance would be removed so that, in fact, they would be open to the message of Christianity. That's what we were hoping for, and that's why we take the time to both pray and share at the same time. We don't just do one or the other, we do both, because we're trying to deal with not just rational rejections, but emotional rejections and volitional rejections. I hope that kind of helps you think through the nature of truth, definitions for truth, and reasons why people would reject truth claims. And that kind of wraps up our series of about 4 broadcasts here that we've done on the nature of truth. And I hope it helps you. You can kind of go back. You can see on our YouTube page attached to the coldcasechristianity.com webpage, you can go and just kind of look at all those episodes to remind yourself how to make the case for what is true. And I'll see you right here next week at Cold Case Christianity.
Thanks for joining us at the Cold Case Christianity broadcast. If you're interested in more information about this week's topic, please visit coldcasechristianity.com. For a thorough investigation of the reliability of the New Testament Gospels in the case for Christianity, be sure to purchase Cold Case Christianity. A homicide detective investigates the claims of the Gospels. It's available wherever books are sold.